I'm not against psychopharmacology in principle, but I don't think the human species should be forced to adapt and bow down to it as the be-all, end-all of science, while homos and fucking retards are letting the third world rob, rape, and blame our little boys till they're old enough to shoot up a school. We're not just crazy. We're actually, but for religious purposes, within the realm of God's creation, you cannot possibly be born that way. Heretics are starving and persecuting people to force them to join in their flat earth crusade. And you can get back in your boat. Sigmund Freud was talented analyst or not, he was a deeply disturbed individual. By the time they got him to pioneer the fluorine dosing study that led to the Nazi experiments in the Holocaust, he was a fugitive. Like, he was under the protection of the gay mafia in a foreign country. He was in exile in London before the Nazis bombed it. They're protected by people who lack they lack any rational justification for expansion, so they have to plant atrocities and abominations and protect them and not let us investigate. And now they can come and go as they please, and if they can do it, anybody can do it. Where's my cut? Oh, how could it possibly come to this? Well, there are like ancient rules. You know how they call America a democracy? Now we're always trying to export democracy to those who could benefit from more democracy. If you really think you are a Scottish lord, consider yourself a subject of the Nigerians. Calling Idi Amin the last king of Scotland affects everybody who looks remotely like me. Now, I know Hollywood and BBC didn't mean to sell the entire, like, all the Caucasians. Why? How is that even a factor? Why should we even consider that as a possibility? You see, kids, Islam does not acknowledge any distinction between church and state. There's but one Allah. Muhammad is the prophet. You're either a slave of the prophet or the infidel. You can convert us all to Islam for an illegal corporate prison racket on the land in America. Give us a heads up. Like, pray 5 times a day. You won't, New York City, is that too much to ask? Put labels on everything else. You can't be like, oh, by the way, Islamic States of America. What can we possibly do? Well, I think if we take a responsibly ethical approach, we assert some kind of accountability, then maybe others will see our example. How nuts could Timothy McVeigh have really been? A ranger? I forget. Was he a ranger? He might have just been a sapper. Mel Gibson, he's not an anti-Semite. When he said it was the Jews, that's the Jews' historical role in our society, and they're acting crazy. Why? Because Islam's not an actual religion. It exploits Judaism and Christianity. Selling pictures of us for $1 million. Who do you think you are? I've never forged ink on paper, let alone as a pretense to sell me to the new agency. Like, I don't needle the insurance company. Like, I can do without. Act like everything has to be, like, over-regulated so you can afford the affections of our new Islamic warlord in sub-Saharan Africa. Freud gave us some snake oil we can try to fight the war on drugs with. Force it down our throats and act like you're still in charge. Prozac is fluoxetine. That's fluorine. Subsidized Luftwaffe toxic waste pills. How much did we pay them to take that from us to begin with? See, they're using illicit chemicals, which are not legal here, to leverage their influence over our consumption of toxic waste pills. Which, I'm not completely against the pharmacology as a discipline. I'm just saying, yes, there are therapeutic applications for uncontrollable extremes of emotion which that adversely affect the patient's ability to function in society. What's the cause of that? Like, it is helpful from time to time to to treat, rather when a cure is unavailable, and being part of the problem has always been concern of the market, which led to the establishment of what constitutes a doctor 3,000 years ago. First, do no harm. Now you work for a judge, a senator, a congressperson, president, the Pope. It's basically like I confess to like what I was there for, and there's some things that they didn't happen when I was there, and I wasn't supposed to find out about them until somebody put the kibosh on my career, but I found out anyway. I have not been allowed to give testimony under oath at this time. Who was there? Somebody other than the United States Department of State that you wanted me to do that with? Treasury? You want to see if we can compare notes with the president? I don't know who these people think they are, but if their intentions were honorable, don't you think they'd be scalping? I mean, don't you think they'd be scalping more of us if they were stayers? The scalpings, that's France's fault. Historically, the French are not the last to pivot. The corporation needs to learn how to pivot. France, we get some pivot lessons over here. Prussia, I can't possibly rape all these Protestants by myself. The heart is willing, but the flesh is weak. This means that Trump's excuse for running all these years, the investigation that he couldn't complete in one term, even though like he didn't have an accident like right away, like the next day. I mean, the wall does repeal NAFTA, which Walmart and Prozac is the Eli Lilly's France. But after de Gaulle, Libyan influence in France increased substantially. They don't necessarily have to convert to Islam right away. They just have to garner support to overthrow all the wicked all at once. And they exploit their interpretation of our IRS definition of religion to just manipulate our economy. Socrates established for the round side of the planet that the government can be wrong from time to time, but you're not just going to prevent them from, like, you're not going to stop me from telling them, like, this is what they're doing, and act like, sit there and tell everybody to buy crypto money and deny some of us the opportunity to engage in any market. If 200,000 people starved for us for being in Somalia in the first place, it goes to follow that they ate our pilots. That is the official story. Therefore, the logical inference is that they ate our pilots. And whether or not that's the case, I'm pretty sure by the abundance of RPGs that they'd rather have the money. Like, I know how to do this. Whoever's been preventing Washington from conducting this investigation obviously has no idea what's going on if they're from here. Corporate telling the FBI not to follow up on my complaints because I made some kind of arrangement I'm not yet aware of. On behalf of the Department of State or Department of Treasury. My name is Noel D. Smith, single, straight, no kids, never married, no abortions, no abominations, no divorces, no bankruptcies. Formerly decorated so-and-so with the yada yada, airframe, triage, theology. For all intents and purposes, I do solemnly swear that I shall first do no harm, and that I shall preserve and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Is that too much to ask? I'm sorry, officer, I'm not able to comply with your subtle request at this time, as I could lose my practice. I have an oath. CIA claims to be our nation's first line of defense. Well, I found another one, guys. Go all the way to California, end up trying to tell a doctor, like, find a grown-up, I got the Lollipop Guild running around. Wait, like, when are you leaving? I put in a resume in California. They're trying me in public on some crazy shit with no warning. And they got Bridge Club following me around. It's obviously not a traumatic brain injury, lady. Feminazi grandma and her gay mafia roommate calling me a liar. Do you have a hospital report? Mario Chavez died at least 8 years before he testified in that case. That occurred, that was not our AO. I mean, I didn't even claim to be there. Just because I heard about some kind of a thing that happened, act like I was in on it, like they made a deal directly with me because I'm a PFC. No, it's just some goddamn jinglehead calling people crazy behind their backs for money. They're able to subsidize the perpetuity of that because they are asserting prerogative to penalize us for, you don't know what that's worth. Like Mexico, I get it, but they have Sikh temples all throughout mainly the American Southeast quadrant. I've seen Nigerian priests in multiple Catholic churches in Florida, big ones. I mean, these people will build 4 mega churches in the middle of nowhere facing each other, parking lots the size of airports. We can't find a Mexican priest. I mean, Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II got shot right after Ronald Reagan, which, who's negotiating? Somebody thought that we were negotiating. Like, the National Defense Authorization Act cannot afford me at this time. What does that mean? That means whatever you use that, get the story straight. You can't ban waterboarding. That's why. I'm a waterboard. Arrest me. They're using our First Amendment, freedom of religion, to leverage our foreign exchange by robbing and raping and blaming little boys until they're old enough to shoot up a school, because that's our religion. Why are American kids going so crazy? I don't know. Is it because we threw a bunch of subsidized Luftwaffe toxic waste pills in the drinking water behind the Privacy Act, claimed it against insurance, backed by Flat Earth? I never claimed to be a Catholic priest. If I wasn't a priest of some kind, what was the point of raping me in surgery anyway? Anybody can rape a peasant. Like, I don't know, between Israel, Rome, London, Geneva, Washington, and here, how many people ascribe to marital rape in general? It says here, thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind. It is abomination. Does that sound like standard practices for Jerusalem or Rome? Is Rome asserting that our age of consent is a 7-year-old boy under sedation? Like, now you're a permanent resident? Now, the way these people think, because I did not murder him at my first and only opportunity with no explanation who he was or what impression he was under, but that all they have to do is have a picture that says, look, he forgave it, and I didn't even know about it. Call me crazy for not murdering the first diaper head I run across when I get out of the military. Again, on my way to work. Like, it's obviously not a traumatic brain injury, lady. I got a bus to catch. This guy, that's an interesting cult. Like, I should read into that. Carries a sword at all times. I thought it was just to cut that baby in half, but I guess I was more right than I thought. Sikh temple is not a sect of the Hindu temple. The ancient scriptures were, I mean, they represent a lot of things, but fundamentally the reason that they became as popular as they are is because they act as a passport between kingdoms. These people are getting paid to sell us back our toxic waste that we paid them to take, and holding us to a biblical standard. Police, everybody in America is accustomed to the police taking certain liberties with the facts from time to time. Like, these people got you taking both sides, playing both sides of the bank on our behalf, and we're under no compulsion to compete in a stack, like, wagering on selling these people's kids to begin with, let alone taking a dive at the first opportunity. Waterboarding allows the efficient extraction of information in order to minimize friendly casualties and shrinkage. Given the context that I was aware of, I did what came naturally to me. Supposedly some rough customers, like, they didn't ask me to my face. So you're just basically scouting our talent and using them to your own devices with no opportunity to correct the record. This generation of Americans did not have to necessarily be forced to adapt to whatever unwashed asshole they have become, but there's none among you who wouldn't spare a generation of gambling for short futures on Wall Street. Like I promise Il Vaticano, that's what I'm working on.
And he said, "It is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither it is the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear. And it came to pass, as soon as he came nigh unto the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot. And he cast the tables out of his hands, and brake them beneath the mount. And he took the calf which they had made, and burnt it in the fire, and ground it to powder, and strawed it upon the water, and made the children of Israel drink of it. And Aaron said, Let not the anger of my Lord wax hot. Thou knowest the people, that they are set on mischief."
Before we continue, any objection to how I just read that? You know me as Bubba Silver on YouTube and Alpha Golden Volk on Twitter. And my blog is mfrodeo.blogspot.com. First, I shall do no harm. And then I'll do it just for the medals. I got jingle heads. Taking orders from the third world. Filling orders because we owe money. We paid them to take this toxic waste. They repackaged it, compounded it, encapsulated it, sold it back to us through France. And now we owe them money. See what they did to Muammar Gaddafi? FBI telling us we're not allowed to own gold. Muammar Gaddafi minting gold bars. Poor bastard. Blackwater, the people robbing and raping and blaming little boys until they're old enough to shoot up a school. NRA, they don't have my permission to protect me, and they never will. I don't know, Department of Health and Human Services is sending me nothing but hooker advertisement. It's like, you want to contact me on social media. Corporate got the Mockingbird cranked up to 11 for the past 8 years. Told you to cut your losses. Said I already won. I didn't know what you were accusing me of yet. The Nazis invented some new toys. Majesties, my lords. They're playing Flat Earth Olympics with the third world. Yeah, no, I don't mean just like white people, and I don't mean like pick through my yearbook and pick out your favorites. Like I wasn't in on it. Zombie apocalypse. So we're still waterboarding London, Edinburgh. We definitely can waterboard Royal Bank of Scotland, United States Mint. Because I did say, why don't you tell them to quit, like they were going to quit. But I actually didn't expect them to quit. And usually, you know, when you tell people like that to quit, it just means that you don't know about it anymore. But how convenient to interpret that, however, while Saudi Taliban is still Taliban, are freely enrolling themselves on Harvard rolls through a back door. I know, they're the good Muslims. There are Muslims, but they're Muslims, right? Why it's called Taliban? Because it's Arabic for student. Man of the book, rabbi, priest. We got the Martians robbing and raping and blaming little boys until they're old enough to shoot up a school. They made the Stonewall a national monument. It raped 84,000 Boy Scouts and stole our land grants Teddy Roosevelt gave us. The Boy Scouts found a bag of money and it says Walker on it. George W. Bush had to suck Berlini's dick to get that money back. Now on the round side of the planet, we take for granted that that's not the case. But on flat Earth, where they get paid to persecute their customers, so in honor of the man's dear late departed father, the Boy Scouts who either got raped or didn't, that lost their Teddy Roosevelt's land grants, found a bag of money that says Walker on it. Robbing and raping and blaming little boys and trying to come up with some excuse for not telling the president. Yes, your religious protection it is your religious freedom is protected here by him. Lo, for I have sinned, and I have done wickedly. But these sheep, what have they done? Let thine hand, I pray thee, be against me and my Father's house. You see the big white house? This ain't it. We know it's these idiots with this scandal rags. And maybe, freedom of the press wasn't as free as it could have been. But when Eisenhower said, in the halls of governance, we must guard against the unwarranted acquisition of power, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex, he didn't mean drag it back and forth through the jungle in Vietnam until it dies, but that's what we did. De Gaulle represented a large part of our interests in France, maybe not everybody's at the same time, but whether or not he was a terrorist is subject to certain ancient stipulations. I mean, you're calling him a barbarian, calling him a crazy person. We don't need that kind of defense budget that badly. We maintain a deficit with our allies because it's cheaper and safer than shipping gold, and we, perform certain tasks due to our various blessings. I mean, whether or not you come over here and act like we owe you money so you can use our thing to flog us with it, like, instead of paying it back, if our doctors have a thing that they flog us with so they can pay the guide, that's one thing. But first I shall do no harm, or somebody's liable to finish what I started. You feel me? And one might even go so far as to say, first do no harm, or you are a slave of the prophet or the infidel, and you are no match for the mujahideen. First do no harm, or you are not a doctor. You are a barbarian, an animal. You have no rights, let alone authority, and your currency is subject to custom. So Socrates proved the world was round. I don't know why it's necessary for me to sing and dance like this for hours on end every day for 8 years. I was unaware of any opportunity to negotiate prior to that due to the presence of an undesirable on the land who has since vacated the premises for purposes of the games. Islam has been pretending to be Catholics for 1,500 years. It would not be unheard of for Boko Haram to be ministering to the Spanish and a major sector of the American bishopry. Don't you think that puts a little, that's kind of unfair for the Mexicans? Like, maybe it's no wonder they went with, okay, whatever, he raped a dog. Was Scotland even informed of the opportunity to negotiate that? Because Irish enough for the likes of you. I have never raped any four-legged beast, which did not go on to become the mother of all Scotsmen. People with no concept of religion trying to play God with us. And I know it's just a Clockwork Orange doing what they do, but you got to be mindful of who you work for. That's why, I mean, Islam acknowledges no distinction between church and state, which means that if you work for a judge, they have no argument for going around, but just first do no harm. You have to be sworn to represent a sovereignty before you assert the authority, the stoic responsibility, the duty to say, stand back, I'm a doctor. You ain't telling nobody what to do. If you're running collections through Muslim sovereignty, Ron DeSantis is the next president of the United States. I'm here to tell you. If you do everything strictly by the book in regard to me, like, if you know anybody who's allowed to read one, you're like, yeah, I know a thing or two about a thing or two. The big five religions: Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. Religion is a search for universal and eternal truth. Our God is omnipotent and eternal, but not Islam. Allah is an idiot. He's been looking for the same fugitive for the past 1,500 years. I wrote a bunch of stuff on my blog. Some of it might be secret projects. I'll give it to the CIA. But the Treasury, their definition of religion, so that the Supreme Court has guidance, in their rulings on protection. So we are not sailing around the globe to prove it is flat. It is not merely a system of shared beliefs between 100 or more of the unwashed jinglehead masses, but some traditions believe everyone has to be dumb enough to be pushed around by anybody dumb enough to believe it. You will find definitions for basic theological principles such as philosophy, religion, cult, doctor, mfrodeo.blogspot.com. My first rodeo. We did not knock down 3 towers with 2 planes and a paper fire. I was not party to any negotiations. It does not matter what you thought I may or may not be saying in plausibly deniable subspeak. There was no reasonable expectation of me knowing what the hell they thought we were talking about. I didn't even know they thought we were talking. They tried to kill me before I found out about it, and now I've quantified a foreign attack. Just like I said before I left, like, I ain't got time for this nonsense. Got big fish to fry. Whatever you thought, like, how you gonna act like Flynn's an admission of guilt and then pretend I never left? How stupid would the species have to become? What level, what IQ do we have to adapt to in order for this particular arrangement to stay in charge? Qualify your legal immunity. Justify your custodianship of our wealth. I feel absolutely terrible for our dear, sweet, innocent Federal Bureau of Investigation being forced to compete on such a level with flat Earth as to become the right arm of a puritanical, racist, gay, atheist, communist, flat Earth infidel god. My deepest sympathies. You see, their job is to qualify or substantiate conventional attack by conducting due process on the land, ensuring the efficient, effective, and smooth flow. They have been prevented from doing that by arguments made through illegitimate religious authorities. They cannot necessarily be subject to the budget stipulations of people who've never served a day in their life. In fact, there is a catch-all in place which fulfillment of which actually led to the establishment of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where Treasury remains solvent or we mobilize regardless. The FBI is kind of like a placeholder, so we don't have to do that. It's a tedious and expensive process in the long run, which generates momentum, which is not necessarily in the best interest of the sod busters. But you don't end up with gay communist academics trying to outsell the third world on these little blonde kids. Call it continuity. You do not assert prerogative to investigate the Catholic Church. It's a 2,000-year-old church. It is here before Washington. It'll be here when Washington's gone. You're not going to just invoke equal opportunity or whatever ridiculous. I can't even imagine. Nobody could possibly be this stupid by accident. It's not a coincidence. However they got in there, it's not, I don't know if we've ever had Nigerian priests ministering directly to the Spanish, but it would not be unheard of for Islam to attack the Spanish. Not historically unprecedented. So we want Mexican priests for the Spanish, or Spanish priests for the Mexicans at least. Somebody who represents this flock and just like a substitute teacher for a bunch of converts for the idiot god of flat Earth. Like, I don't know if they're you're never German enough for some Christians, but regardless whether they're Catholic, when they sneak across the border, like, they will be eventually The place where they came from was Catholic. They're gonna learn English, be a lot easier with the Catholic Church. Nigeria is basically using a major, like a primary branch of the Catholic Church as human shields for a cocaine money laundering and little blonde kid racket. And it's not the Nigerians' fault, right? They call it the gold mafia over there. That's why I say it's not the Muslims, it's Islam. But they're not here for my submission. Like, and even if they were, I don't bow to inferior Muslims. Like, there's a whole rule set here that you're just completely overlooking in your negotiations. First, do no harm, or you're not a doctor. Pirates, if that's the authority you invoke, whether or not that, qualifies as a religion under the IRS rules, is irrelevant, because they go directly to the governor's office, or they're shoot on sight. They don't mix with the common folks. Get us mixed up. Get me mixed up. So Ron DeSantis is obviously the next president of the United States, or when you leaving. So what I want to do, regardless of my proposals that I wanted to pitch for strategic hegemony going forward, I would like to, because Harvard and so forth, build a university in honor of Charles Buckley, the late, the great, who was tortured to death immediately prior to us turning our backs on that hellhole forever. And now the CIA has no rational argument for not winning the war on terror. Like, but get your ass back in there. I'd like to participate in the construction of the facility to reside nearby, supervise civil readiness programs, Catholics, Russians. I won't be involved with any cloak and dagger type stuff. It'd be a very open, Turks. It'd be under the direct protection of, like, the Mossad will be responsible. And I know what everybody thinks about the Jews, but if you can't kosher your business with the Knesset without leaving little Mossad residents raped to death on the side of the road, maybe you come from a place where we're not desperately in need of your services at this time. My suggestions are just a minimum, guideline for the establishment of whatever kind of circus rules Wall Street wants to come up with. But at minimum, you can't expect us to just. There's a rational. You want money? We find a reason. We're not just gonna be like, we got to get your money, cutting all kind of corners, leaking money all over the place. Act like you could just blame a 3-year-old. See why I'm comfortable inviting the Jews into my business? The Knesset has religious scholars. Rome has religious scholars. Central Intelligence has translators, and they can find an archaeologist. So I defy any, educated, cultured, sophisticated, academic scholar of the arts does last rites not constitute a cult. Cults are traditionally frowned upon by religions, because religions have not only real estate but prerogative to go conduct their affairs, because it ultimately makes sense. It's not just a regional something handed down from the ancestors that they do, or kill somebody. So that if that's your cult, that's fine for you. You still have human rights. Whatever's necessary. Point being, we're not going to protect that, the expansion of that over here as a religion for economic purposes, because you're already a slave. You have no right to conduct that exchange anyway, and none of it makes any sense. You just analyze each eternal statement in the divine Quran, the big main tenets of their conversion have to do with forfeiting your own sovereignty. Persecute or be martyred. Act crazy, do whatever you want. Just do whatever we tell you. When I say that I am not obligated to the limitations of what passes for intelligence these days, what I mean is, you don't just act like whatever the new phone company says is the law. First, do no harm is the law, not a law. I told you 8 years ago, cool your goddamn jets. I have reference numbers for almost every single message that I have sent the CIA since 2016. They didn't tell us back in the 80s and 90s when they were bringing all these foreign dignitaries from the desert over here that the day would come when we would have to kill them on site, or they would take that as our consent and approval to rob, rape, and blame little boys until they're old enough to shoot up a school. I can't figure out how to make money with that, let alone compete. Why anybody should be required to compete with that, and you act like it's our religion. First, do no harm, or you're not a doctor. Now, who said we can't own gold?